1 year anniversary of the Hamas terrorist attack against Israel. And what did we hear from our erstwhile political leaders? Well, Kamala Harris, she had sat down for that 60 Minutes interview with Bill Whitaker. Probably a decision she'll live to regret. She had this to say about Israel and the work that the Biden-Harris administration has done over the past year.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
You know, I can't hear that clip enough. I'm just.
Can you translate, please?
I want to read it again,
Okay,
just to make sure that people fully internalize. It's a lot to take in. The work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
Wow.
Yeah, that is very dense. She also had this to say about Iran.
Which foreign country do you consider to be our greatest adversary?
I think there's an obvious one in mind, which is Iran. Iran has American blood on their hands, okay? This attack on Israel, 200 ballistic missiles. What we need to do to ensure that Iran never achieves the ability to be a nuclear power, that is one of my highest priorities.
So if you have proof that Iran is building a nuclear weapon, would you take military action?
I'm not going to talk about hypotheticals at this point.
No, of course not.
No, she wouldn't talk about like China invades Taiwan. I'm not talking about hypotheticals.
It's too high level for Bill Whitaker and 60 Minutes audience, obviously.
But she and Biden released billions of dollars in sanctions back to Iran. So,
Yes, they did.
And they used that money to provide the attack, to provide Hamas with weapons that they then went and killed Jewish people on October 7th.
Well, it's a curious strategy to finance your enemy. I've always found that to be very confusing. Number one. Number two, the greatest threat to America, I mean, Iran is a threat. It's a lead state sponsor of terror, but the greatest threat to American hegemony is China, clearly. But nothing is clear to Kamala Harris. Elizabeth Warren issued a statement, Pocahontas, yesterday.
Who cares what she's oh God, she's high and mighty, so of course she released a statement.
Well, everybody has to chime in, particularly those that need to middle the issue, like Biden and Harris are middling it for their political constituency. It was the same thing that Liz did. She began with a recognition October 7th was the deadliest day for the Jewish people since the Holocaust, and expressed sympathy for those who lost their lives and family members of those who lost their lives. Then she got to the point here, the real position, lambasting Netanyahu. And, of course, Harris would not characterize Netanyahu as an ally. Israel's an ally, but the prime minister is not because they don't like the way he's prosecuting the war. Warren writes, instead of securing the release of the hostages, Netanyahu has unleashed unthinkable violence on innocent civilians in Gaza. More than 1 million Palestinians are facing starvation. We see videos of dead children held in the arms of their parents. Violence is escalating throughout the region, including most recently Lebanon, threatening even more human suffering. The cycle of violence won't make anyone safer. The Wall Street Journal and board opines, the cycle of violence theory of war. If only Israel would stop targeting those trying to kill its citizens, somehow the violence would end. Yeah. Note, too, the passive tense for violence is escalating, including in Lebanon. You know, who's escalating it? You mean the Iranian-backed terrorist organizations who are forever escalating, forever engaged in violence, and the escalation of violence where there is opportunity to kill Jews? Yeah. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined by Michael Pack. You may remember Michael Pack. He was the writer and documentarian who did the Created Equal documentary on Clarence Thomas, which was quite good. He is also the CEO of Palladium Pictures and CEO of the U.S. Agency, and was the CEO of the U.S. Agency for Global Media under Trump. His new film, Get the Jew, Brooklyn 1991, he revisits Crown Heights. We were just talking about race hustlers and Brandon Johnson. Now we have another one to talk about. Of course, the noxious Al Sharpton, one of his great moments in professional race hustling. Michael Pack, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on your show.
So why revisit the Crown Heights riot now?
I think it's a pattern that we've seen repeat itself endlessly, and it's good to study its origins. My company, Palladium Pictures, has formed this partnership with the Wall Street Journal opinion section to do videos on recent events that have been either forgotten or misreported. The left dominates the documentary space, as they do many other areas of the media, and as a result, they tell most of the stories about the recent past. And it's not my belief that they shouldn't. It's my belief that we need to tell the stories that they neglect. This is an example of one that they would rather forget because of its relevance to today.
Well, and,
you may remember.
Yeah, go ahead. No, go ahead. Recount what occurred in that day, or that period in '91.
Well, I do encourage your listeners to actually watch it. It's only 20 minutes, and it's free, even though it's on the Wall Street Journal website. It's on wsj.com/opinion if you scroll down to the videos, or their YouTube page, youtube.com/@WSJopinion. But let me summarize it so that we can sort of talk about it. It was 1991, hot summer day in Crown Heights, a sort of roughish neighborhood of Queens at that time. Brooklyn at that time, and it was a neighborhood with a small group of Hasidic Jews surrounded by a predominantly black, poor neighborhood. And there was a traffic accident while a group of cars were returning to the Chabad headquarters, and one car hit another car and then careened off that car and hit two young black children, tragically killing one of them. And instead of thinking this is an accident, a whole group of young black men chose to see it as a symbol of Jews have always gotten away with it. The Jews did it on purpose. That it wasn't an accident. And they marauded through the streets, and they found another Hasidic man, Yaakov Rosenbaum, and said, "Get the Jew," hence our title, "Get the Jew." And they beat him up and stabbed him, and he died. But the mayor did not choose to end the riot then. The riot went on for 3 days. And the first black mayor of New York, David Dinkins, chose not to end it until he himself was attacked. And then he turned to his deputy police chief, Ray Kelly, who ended it in 3 hours. So I think it's a lesson in, for one thing, equating these two things, an accident and an attempted murder. You see it today in the story you were just telling, how some people in the Democratic Party equate Hamas's attack on Israel with Israel's response. They're not morally equivalent, and that habit, persists. So this pattern of violence, anti-Semitic violence, or indeed any kind of left-wing violence, then the media misreports it, which happened in Crown Heights, and then Democratic leadership does nothing. And in the case of David Dinkins, it's not because he was anti-Semitic. He just did not want to offend the left wing of his party. And as you say, Al Sharpton and others have come into the area and whipped up the crowd. We talked to Al Sharpton. He gives his side of the story, and our film attempts to tell the story in a straightforward manner. I'm here expressing my personal opinions, but the documentary itself intends to portray the actual historical events, and your viewers and listeners can make up their own minds.
Can you give us a little bit of what Al Sharpton discussed?
Well, so he did acknowledge that people came in from the outside and whipped up the crowd. He called them, I think, black nationalists. He claimed that he was there just representing the family, and you should watch it. And we have some of his contemporary comments. The different Al Sharpton, the rabble-rouser, the overweight Al Sharpton, who I think was a much more colorful character, actually. Mm. So viewers can decide. It is not Al Sharpton alone. I believe the responsibility really lies with the political leadership who are responsible for maintaining the peace of the city. And by failing to do this, Mayor Dinkins, it's one of the reasons Mayor Dinkins lost the next election to Rudy Giuliani, who turned the city around. I think a lot of New Yorkers were tired of violence and riots in their street, anti-Semitic or otherwise.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like Fat Al Sharpton better as well. The
Over Ozempic.
well, you know, you talk about the pattern of from the Crown Heights matter repeats itself over the last 30 plus years, and it's where you see it repeating itself on college campuses too. I mean, we have seen that since
Yes.
October 7th of last year. That seems to me like, you know, the particular, perhaps the best example of the nexus from of that example to the present.
I agree with you completely. It's the same thing. You know, radical students are violent and chanting from the river to the sea and terrorizing Jewish students, and the media covers it one way, and then the leadership, the presidents of these colleges, can't condemn the violence, as we saw dramatically in the three college presidents that they're hearing. They can't condemn them, and it's not because, again, it's not because they're anti-Semitic. It's that they just can't offend their left wing. Obviously, if the violence had been anti-black, anti-gay, they would condemn it quickly, as they should. But this one, they can't. It's the same thing again, and we end the film with another stabbing in Crown Heights by a stabbing of a Hasidic Jew by a young man shouting, "Free Palestine" and "Do you want to die?" So slogans that in 1991 included "Heil Hitler" and "Hitler didn't finish the job" have become "Free Palestine" and "From the river to the sea." But it's the same groups, the same action, it's the same emotion that animates them.
But did you ever think you'd see this in your time, or that you'd feel unsafe as a Jewish person? I mean, anti-Semitic attacks on college campuses. CBS reported up 300%. Fox was saying they're up 500% since last year.
I never thought I would see it. You know, I am Jewish, and I'm pretty shocked. I mean, and I have friends who have children in some of these schools, liberal friends who have been kind of awakened that this is really a problem. I mean, one of the things you saw in Crown Heights that maybe is different now is, so this was an attack on a Hasidic group, Chabad Lubavitch, and a lot of the mainstream Jewish groups said little. The head of the ADL at the time, Abe Foxman, later apologized. But there was this sense that they're not us. They're Hasidic. They wear black hats. They dress like they're in the 18th century. They're not our Jews. This is Crown Heights, you know, Brooklyn. This is never going to happen on the Upper East Side or Upper West Side of Manhattan. But I think they found out in Columbia and other places like that is not so. First they come for Chabad, and then they come for you. And first they come for the Jews, and then they come for other people. You know, that's a big lesson, and I am still shocked. I cannot believe it. I never thought I would see this in my lifetime.
It's interesting on Columbia. I saw that donations, you know, alumni donations to Columbia are down 29%. Only 29%. That's pretty actually disappointing,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it is. I mean, one of the amazing things about the Crown Heights riot that our guide, Elliot Kaufman, who's a reporter for the Wall Street Journal, makes the point that in the election, the re-election of Mayor Dinkins, he only lost 3% of the Jewish vote. The vote he lost was in places like Staten Island and the other outer boroughs, where kind of white ethnics just got tired of violence in their city against Jews or otherwise.
Right.
So yeah, it's down, not down enough, but still from 3% to 30% is, at least, if I may equate those two very different statistics, is a big change. And
That's true.
you know, I have seen more trustees and alumni and contributors to these colleges stand up than I thought likely to. Maybe too few, but it's a wake-up call for some. We'll see if it makes a permanent change. I mean, I think these Ivy League schools think they have a lock on the fun things, but we'll see.
Well, it's the same thing with the DC Press Corps too. I mean, the press corps, generally speaking, the corporate press has not covered itself in glory over the last year of all that, covering all that has transpired since October 7th.
It certainly hasn't. It certainly hasn't. And I think even just yesterday, I mean, the sort of pro-Hamas, anti-Semitic demonstrations in New York and elsewhere got surprisingly little coverage. I mean, if there had been a Proud Boys demonstration, they would have gotten endless coverage.
Right.
But they really didn't. I mean, someone lit himself on fire here in Washington, D.C., but these are barely stories. And in some ways, Amy, I mean, this is really even worse. People have gotten used to these anti-Semitic chants,
Right.
and they're not news.
Yep.
I mean, that's worse than when they were news. So, yeah, the press corps surely hasn't covered itself in glory. That may be a good understatement.
Michael Pack, CEO of Palladium Pictures, also was the CEO of the U.S. Agency for Global Media under Trump. His new film, Get the Jew, Brooklyn 1991, as he said, 20 minutes. It's free, and you can get it at Wall Street Journal, WSJ.com/opinion. Michael Pack, Get the Jew is the film, Brooklyn 1991. Michael Pack, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. And you can follow him on Twitter at @MichaelPack_. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Connect with Dan and Amy on the AM 560 The Answer mobile app. Just text the word app to 64636 to download the app today.
Few understand the impact this election may have on their retirement savings. In less than 30 days, our entire economy could face a monumental shift that could destroy a huge amount of value many Americans